This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
You'll be sorry.
You want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
All right. Baseball is almost back. Almost. We're so close, guys. This is killing me on a regular basis. We're almost under 50 days away from the start of the regular season, let alone the fact that pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting next week, or maybe a little longer than that, but it's almost next week. So I'm going with next week because it makes me feel better. Flax, how you been? We've both been traveling a bunch, dude.
Good. Yeah. Happy to be back home. Doing this episode from the confines of my own office and not being up in the air in a plane.
Yeah, it's a nice feeling to be in your own bed. The two traveling salesmen you and I are anymore, it would seem. Let's rock right into it though, man. What happened in baseball while you and I were running around like chickens?
Yeah, I'm glad I kept track of it this week while I was not home because a lot happened. Carlos Estevez signed with the Royals, 2 years, $22 million. I was curious where he was going to go, but now the 1-2 punch, the back end of that bullpen with Lucas Erceg is deadly for a team that needed to improve that going into 2025. Max Scherzer finally signed with the Blue Jays, 1 year, $15.5 million on top of what he's making from the Nationals this year. Taylor Rogers traded from the Giants to the Reds. Sadness in my heart seeing the brothers split up, but a really good move for the Reds. In return, for Rogers, the Giants got right-handed pitcher Braxton Roxby. Try saying that name 10 times fast. Tommy Canley, change-up specialist in Detroit, 1 year, $7.75 million. And Detroit was moving. Detroit was moving this week. They also traded Alex Faedo to the Rays. Minor league catcher Anderson Delgado and cash were sent to Detroit in return for this, which also helps them with another signing they made. Jack Flaherty coming back to Detroit, 2 years, $35 million with a player option after year one. If he makes 15 starts this year, he gets another $10 million added to that player option, making it $20 million. So it could be a cool $45 million in total for
big number.
For a one Jack Flaherty. Ryan Stanek re-signs with the Mets, 1 year, $4.5 million. I know Mets Twitter was a little hot and cold about that. A lot of people love his energy. Some people didn't like his stats from last year. All in all, I think a good pickup for a bullpen that just needs depth more than anything. Ryan Presley finally approved a trade. He wanted to stay in the center of the United States, and that he is doing to some extent. Going from the Astros to the Cubs. Houston in return is going to get right-handed pitcher Juan Bello. Austin Hayes signed with the Reds, 1 year, $5 million. Austin Hayes has had some injury issues. I know he had a kidney infection last year that he was battling as well. So I'm excited to see him get a contract for the year, kind of have a show-me opportunity. He's got a lot of incentives or player-based incentives to grow that number from $5 million and up.
Reds were moving and grooving too this week.
Talk about they had a lot going on as well.
100%.
Jorge Polanco re-signed with the Mariners. We're going to try that experiment. Again, he is going to play third base. They picked up Donovan Solano. They expect him to hang out around second base. I also saw Dipoto say today that they believe Dylan Moore's best position in the infield is second base, which is why they like Polanco at third. So we'll see how that goes. $7.75 million. I like the Seattle offense in the post bringing in Edgar Martinez as hitting coach era. I think you're going to see some good things out of them in comparison to the last two to couple, again, a really good starting staff. And then finally, the last thing at the major league level of transactions this week, Carlos Carrasco signs with the Yankees. It's on a minor league, major league split contract. And if he breaks camp with the team, $1.5 million salary that could be up to $2.5 million in performance-based incentives. Interesting for me, to be quite honest. Still not a left-handed pitcher. Um, the Yankees need a left-handed pitcher or two when it's all said and done. They're out there, but they picked up Carlos Carrasco. I don't think it's a terrible move, high upside, and we'll see if he breaks camp. So that's all that happened this week. Any thoughts on the world of baseball in that sense from you, Ryan?
Yeah, Carrasco, it just goes back to what we've been talking about all offseason, and I know a lot of people haven't wanted to hear it, but Major League teams are recognizing that they need 7 to 12 guys who can start ball games. This is really what it comes down to. I totally agree that the bullpen itself in New York definitely needs a left-handed pitcher. However, Carrasco is more there, in my opinion, to provide that type of depth. Love what the Tigers are doing across the board. Really, really good week for Detroit. That front office has done a great job this offseason. Expect them to compete, and I think teams in that division, such as the Guardians and Twins, regardless of what their needs are starting to recognize that Detroit is going absolutely nowhere.
Might again be the most competitive division in the AL. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see them send 3 teams to the playoffs back-to-back years.
It's been one of the most competitive divisions for the last 10 years, and nobody wants to admit it. Everybody thinks of most of the teams in that division stink, and you got to stop and realize that, especially when we were playing 18 divisional games, the real truth of the matter is they were beating the crap out of each other on a regular basis is what it comes down to. So let's move towards our main focus. And this week we wanted to do something a little bit different for you guys. Travel's been really tough for both Evan and I, and we were trying to look into something that we could do that would be entertaining for a bunch of different fan bases that we have had the opportunity to endear ourselves to via Twitter and Instagram. Know that we really appreciate that, and we do love that our platform is able to talk to so many different groups of people within the baseball sphere. So what did we do? We took a look at 5 questions about the 2025 MLB season. And Evan and I have only briefly read the other person's questions. There's not an insane amount of here's all the data that supports this, but we're going to sit here, we're going to answer these questions for you as honestly as we can and give you our opinions on where we think these things are. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off with the first question, and it was the first thing that came to my mind because, I'm going to start with the Orioles because why wouldn't I with Flax? We're going to talk about the 2025 season. We got to ask him something about the Orioles.
Start me with a softball.
I will throw you a 95-mile-an-hour splinter because that's what I do best. I'm kidding. The Orioles are primed for a huge 2025 season, in my opinion. There's been a lot of questions about different things with them. However, they easily have one of the best lineups and young cores in all of baseball, and it's not really up for discussion. I think that's just how I look at it. So, what will affect the Baltimore Orioles in the first half of the season more? Bringing in the left field wall and shortening that up, or the absence of a number 1 starter in their rotation, and why?
Well, I'll start with this. I just love that we're giving national broadcasts something new to talk about with the wall. They're not going to talk about how big and far away it is. They're going to talk about how much closer it is now, which is exciting. We'll get to see how many home runs of the last 3 years would have gone out. That aside, I think it's going to be the absence of a true number 1 starter. And at least until the All-Star break, or at least until the trade deadline when they decide they want to go get somebody. We've talked about this before. The way I feel about it is you need to establish a good lineup. Pitching is always available. You have to be willing to pay the price. Someone is always going to be available. I don't necessarily think the starting pitching market was great this offseason. They had their eyes set on Corbin Burns. He obviously went a different direction for reasons that you can't control. And so when I look at what's going to affect them most in the first half, it's going to be whether or not they can bridge that gap. So it resides on 2 big things for me. Is Grayson Rodriguez going to step up and be the number 1 starter? It's really hard for me to say yes, considering he does have an injury history. I'd like to see the shoulder stay healthy for at least the first 2.5 months of the season. Go make every single start you're supposed to make every 5 days and be successful doing it. Secondly, Zach Eflin needs to keep building on what he has been doing in the past. He is an elite strike thrower. His strikeout to walk ratios are otherworldly, and it shows in his result-based statistics where he has been very successful keeping runs off the board, can collect strikeouts when he needs them, but is generally a pretty efficient pitcher and can throw a good amount of innings because he doesn't need to throw tons of pitches to get outs because he stays in the zone. Guys like to swing early in the count, and the Orioles have a good defense behind him. But without that true number one starter to set the tone every single week, it'll be interesting to see if I don't want to call them lesser starting arms, but not as highly rated starting arms can build off of those two guys. What you saw last year with Corbin Burns was he'd go out and he would throw a gem. Well, the next guy wants to go in and one up him, so he throws really well. And it just cascades on top of itself. And what you see a lot of teams struggle with when they don't have that true number one is finding that cascade effect so you can just start rattling off wins and being in every ball game every single day and having an offense that knows as long as they show up to the park, they've got a chance where it's not going to be all on their shoulders. So I think the wall is going to be minimal, to be quite honest, and that's why I kind of lean towards the number one starter being the most important factor the first half of the season. So
I like it. I'm gonna just take devil's advocate here and say that you guys are gonna slug so much this year that it might not matter in the first half.
I like to think that. But
Kobe Mayo and Tyler O'Neill, thank you.
You're not talking about a lineup that's that much different from the end of last season. Granted, beginning of season, end of season are very different times of the year. Adley had a hurt hand last year. It's baseball. Like, hitting a baseball is really hard. I think hitting a baseball is harder than throwing a strike.
You got a lot of right-handed pop. That's the only thing I love about the wall. And I also think that Ray Rod has a chance to step up. So either way, I love that. I think it's going to be really, really fun to see what happens with the O's this year. And it's fun to be talking about the fact that the wall is coming in.
And for everybody but an Orioles fan, I love the wall where it was, to be quite honest with you.
You're the only one.
I don't think that's true. There were very few games where an Oriole hit a ball and I was like, oh man, that would have really helped us. There were way more times where another player hit a ball and I thought, that sucks, because you thought you hit a home run and you didn't. And now your team is deflated.
It's a good point.
Way, way more times. Unless your name's Ryan Mountcastle. He's like the only one.
All right. You watch more games than me, so you know I trust you.
Well, that's true. Okay. I'm also going to go down the path of the Nationals. I wanted to, give you a softball here. Jump in with an easy one. The Nationals also have a really nice young core. We've talked about it a lot. I think they're probably 1 year behind the window of where the Orioles are at. Two big names, Dylan Cruz, James Wood. Who are you higher on going into the 2025 season and why?
So I have to stand and die on my hill, which is really important that I always do in these scenarios. And the answer for me is Dylan Cruz. And the reason why it's Dylan Cruz is a couple different layers. One, I think I've told everybody in my life that I think Dylan Cruz is one of the best prospects I've ever seen put on a baseball uniform from a major league perspective. He's a guy who has literally been the number one player in some way, shape, or form at every single level of which he has played at some point in time in his career at these levels. And the best part about Dylan Cruz is every time he's gone to the next level, nothing has changed at all. The first time there was any change in Dylan Cruz being the best player on the field was when he stepped in to play minor league baseball for the first time in 2023 and some struggles he had in 2024. I think they're very explainable struggles, and that's simple. This is the first time Dylan Cruz, in my opinion, is dealing with any type of levels of failure. He has gone everywhere he's gone and just annihilated baseballs. He has arguably the best hit tool, in my opinion, from a guy who actually has 60-plus gap-to-gap power that I've seen on anybody coming out of a draft. I think Cruz really gets to settle in this year. I think he might. Cruz, Wood are the start of Soto, Harper, and Turner, is how I look at them. So I definitely don't want to knock down what I think James Wood is going to do this year. I just have to stick on the fact that I think right now Cruz has the higher overall upside. I think Cruz is a legitimate five-tool player. I think he's hitting 25 bombs plus, 25 doubles plus, 25 steals plus, and potentially has the ability to win Gold Gloves in the corner outfield for the next 15 years. And his pop potential might be higher.
You just said something there, and I was actually talking to my friends about this weekend, and now I'm curious to ask you. When you talk about five-tool player, right, on the side of hitting for power, what is the number for you, home runs wise, where you're like, okay, he checked the box for that tool if he's consistently doing it every season? What's the number in your
I think
mind?
the number's got to be about 25. I think it's about the mark that I just put out there.
Yeah, that was the consensus.
There
That
are
was the
there
consensus amongst me and my buddies.
it's hard to say that 20 home runs is the number. And I'll give you a good example here outside of the two guys we're talking about. Naylor only has 130 plus home run season. That was last season. Some of that has to do with health. But my point is I do consider Naylor to have a plus power tool, even though he hasn't necessarily shown it on a more consistent basis, right? There are guys who have plus power tools who also will just never stick at the major league level because when you have a 20 or 30 contact skill hit tool, you're just going to strike out too much and you're not going to put the barrel on the bat enough. It's how it works. Listen, I love Franmil Reyes using another Guardian as a good example. Franmil Reyes had as good of a power tool as anybody in baseball. Doesn't matter if you can't consistently hit breaking balls and put the barrel of the ball. Put the ball on the barrel of the bat. Dear Lord. So
There you go. Pedro Serrano.
Miguel Sano. Rolling
Same
back
guy.
to this though.
Same guy.
I think both players are going to be excellent. I am going to die on my hill and say Cruz is the one with the better overall upside. However, I want to be very clear. I said it already. Harper, Soto, Turner. That is what every Nationals fan misses when it comes to our lineup. And I think Cruz would give me another name in 5 years 3 to 5 years is going to make Nationals fans feel the same way that those three names made them feel. So big fan of Wood, big fan of Cruz, but I'm going to take Cruz in this specific argument.
I like it. I like it.
All right.
I think you're right.
Let's roll into stuff that doesn't have anything directly to do with our own teams. And I'm going to roll over to new Toronto Blue Jay, Max Scherzer, who just signed, as many of you would know. We would like to throw out there that Max Scherzer did sign for a very similar amount as Alex Cobb did to the Detroit Tigers. Just want to throw that in there because I know Flax wanted me to say it. And the real question here is, though, has nothing to do with the contract. Do you believe he and Scherzer has anything left in the tank? And does he finish the season with the Toronto Blue Jays?
Oh, gosh. It's one of those guys that's so hard to bet against because the competitor in him, when he's healthy, will just go until his arm falls off. Like it's almost Nolan Ryan-esque, right? Where he's standing on a mound and it's just mano-y-mano, you versus the hitter. And there's not that many guys in the big leagues that like show that in game when you're watching them do their thing. And so if Max Scherzer's healthy, it's hard for me not to sit there and say, yeah, you'll probably get 30 starts out of him in 200 innings. But let's face facts. He's going to be 40 years old. Last year, he threw 45 innings, again, hurt. But the 2 years before that, middled around 150 innings. I think that you'd probably be lucky to get 20 to 25 starts out of him. If you're considering that a full season for a 40-year-old, then yeah, I do think so. But there's probably a high likelihood because of the size of his contract this year, if nobody has to take on the bulk of any of his deferred money, like the Rangers did when they traded for him from the Mets, my guess is he probably doesn't finish the season as a Blue Jay. The Blue Jays aren't going to owe him a lot. The Rangers aren't really going to have any say for the money to get taken off their hands. It's a pretty easy trade target if he's thrown a solid amount of innings and is showing good health and solid success. Because he's been there, done that, right? He's been to the mountaintop. He knows what it takes. And like I said, he's a competitor. If you're a team that needs that guy who comes in with a little bit of piss and vinegar, comes to a winning squad, and has a plan to come in and take you over the hump, bullpen or starter, and you can just run him out there and say throw strikes and get outs, he's kind of your guy. So I think he's got a lot left in the tank, even though he's 40, which is crazy to say. I think he's going to come back healthy. His 45 innings weren't weren't bad when he did come back, and I think when it's all said and done, he's probably not finishing the year as a Blue Jay. That's how I look at it.
Like it. I think that Scherzer's got something there. He is one of those guys that is like a Verlander, a guy he pitched with younger in his career. He's literally going to throw until the wheels fall off. Our parents got to, again, referencing our parents here this podcast for some reason, they got to watch Nolan Ryan run the brakes off of his arm. I know my dad did for sure. And there are a couple different guys in this league right now who are going to be willing to do that. They are the ultimate type competitors. And that is what Scherzer is. Getting to watch his time in DC, getting to watch him with Detroit. It'll be super interesting to see how this ends up. And a lot of it, obviously, everybody is going to have less to do with Scherzer potentially and more to do with how the Blue Jays perform. Roster's pretty good, but there's a lot to talk about there, and we might be talking about that a little bit later.
They're going to be a really interesting case of whether or not we think they're going to be buyers or sellers. But I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that time of year where we start talking about buyers and sellers, because it's all contract numbers and what makes sense and where you're at with all of that nonsense, even more than it is, especially nowadays, even more than it is where you are from a playing perspective.
A lot to be done in that space for sure. I don't disagree, and excited to do it, but let's get the season to start, you know?
Yeah. All right. My second one for you, we're going to the broad whole of Major League Baseball. What was the most impactful, what I'm calling B-level acquisition across the league so far? No Sotos, no best B-level, non-superstar or older player on a low-cost contract this offseason so far.
All right, I'm going to give you one that is going to be so far out of left field, but I do believe...
If you say the same one I'm thinking, I'm going to go crazy.
I don't know. If it's the same one that you're thinking, then we're in trouble. I'm going to go with little-known third baseman Gio Urshela with the Athletics.
Whoa.
We're going to reach into the bag.
That's not what I was thinking.
And let's have a discussion of why Gio Urshela. Why is that such an impact? Well, if you've looked at that Athletics roster this offseason, with some of the acquisitions they've made, bigger ones being Luis Severino, putting something in that rotation. The other thing that you'll notice is, oh crap, they can rake as a roster. But the one problem that they have is they have very little true veteran depth that has been there, done that in some way, shape, or form. Urshela is going to be on the field. Urshela is going to really show those guys what it means to be part of a roster that can really get through the dog days of summer and make some type of run in the playoffs. And as most of you know, there is a level of importance when you have a young team to have a guy who can shepherd them the right way in the dog days of summer. Shepherd them in the right way when you hit September and you're in a race and every single game matters. Urshela has done that with a couple of different teams. He's still worth a damn at the plate on a regular basis. He doesn't walk much, but last year he only struck out 15.6% of the time. He still hit 9 home runs. And oh, by the way, everybody forgets Urshela is a very solid third baseman on a regular basis. So let's just reach into the bag and have some fun here. Not go with the names everybody might be thinking of, but Gio Urshela is going to make a large impact for the Athletics, in my opinion, coming down the end of the year.
I want to start a tracker to see if we talk about the Athletics being in the playoffs in 2025 or steroids more before the season starts.
Hey, I never said they were going to make the playoffs.
Close.
I never said they were going to make the playoffs.
You did.
I said they were going to be in the hunt.
You said to make a playoff run.
I said in the hunt. I said first team out. Go watch the replay.
My listen. If you didn't listen to it, episode 10, will the Athletics be good in 2025? Yes, they will be. Heard it here first. I love that, actually. I was thinking Max Kepler to the Phillies, but I love the Gio Urshela pick. That is a really, really solid choice.
You know, the funny thing is I don't think you and I actually consider Kepler that much of a B-level player. We just consider him hurt.
Well, that's why I was going to say it is like it wasn't like a brand name acquisition for the Phillies as far as the players they've gone out and gotten in the past or the trades they were out there considering. But
Kepler's a great answer. Don't get me wrong, because me and you have talked about what Kepler's going to do if healthy. Guys, the only question ever right now with Max Kepler is Max Kepler healthy? And
do we consider right field in Do we consider right field in Philadelphia kind of a short porch, high wall?
That's a great question. We'd have to look at what it looks like, but I wouldn't be surprised. And the other thing, by the way, while we're on the Kepler train, people, he's an above average defender. Just going to throw that out there. He's going to roam the outfield for them. So either way, we're reaching into the damn bucket and we're pulling out Gio Urshela. I kind of love that. We'll see. I'm sure he'll now find a way to not make the team or something ridiculous like that. But here we are.
What was it? It was last week. You had a buyer for the White Sox for like 6 guys, and the next day 3 of them got signed by
other teams,
not the White Sox.
Yeah. That definitely happened.
It's that baseball unstitched bump, except the other way around.
We'll be good. Gio's on the major league deal that we all thought he was. Okay, 1 year, 2.15 million.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
people.
they wouldn't have guaranteed that on ink without knowing he's got a 26-man spot. I mean, they need it. They quite literally need.
He makes a lot of sense for them. So either way, in the words of my father, moving right along. All right. What you got?
On to my next question. The Toronto Blue Jays. Toronto Blue Jays have missed out on the likes of Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Roki Sasaki, Shohei Ohtani. This year, twice with Sasaki and Soto. However, they did sign Santander, they did sign Jeff Hoffman, and they have made a flurry of other fortifying moves and backed up non-tendering Jordan Romano. When you look at that, how do you currently grade the Toronto Blue Jays offseason?
I know for some reason nobody wants to hear me say this, but guys, they've had a pretty damn good offseason so far. There's a good argument, in my opinion. I see you shaking your head over there. There's a good argument, in my opinion, that the Blue Jays are somewhere in the B+, A- range. I really think so, and here's why. This is pretty simple for me. Look, you lost out on all of these superstars that everybody's talking about. That's fine. You added 40 home runs worth of pop in a switch hitter with Santander. Okay? Your bullpen needed a little bit of help last year, and we all knew it, and you went out and you got Jeff Hoffman. Yeah, fine. You were team number 3 in line for Hoffman with his arm issues. But however, Hoffman is on your roster. The rotation, maybe it's not the craziest thing you've ever seen, but Goffman, Berrios, Bassett, Scherzer, and then now you have your pick of who's going to be healthy within Yariel Rodriguez, who's in his 2nd season at the major league level now, with very, very good stuff for anybody who's not got to watch him pitch. And, oh, wait a minute, Alek Manoah kind of looked like himself before he just unfortunately got hurt again. So I think the Blue Jays have done a little bit more than maybe people realize. I'm willing to give them around that B+ range for what they've done this offseason. And I would also like to remind everybody that they did 2 other things that we're not talking about because they weren't necessarily offseason moves. 1, Joey Loperfido. You don't know what you got there, but Loperfido has proven that he can play some elite level defense and potentially swing the bat pretty well. Oh, by the way, Will Wagner, not awful last year at the end of the season. Oh, by the way, Bo Bichette, down year last year. That was because of injury. If you think Bo Bichette's going to do that again this year, you're crazy. Oh, wait, Andres Jimenez, platinum gold glover winner at second base. Regardless of how much I've crapped on that trade, that doesn't mean you didn't get something good in Jimenez from what he can do. And if they can bring his bat around a 315 WOBA, which is just a little over league average, all of a sudden, these guys might be cooking with a lot more gas than people think. So I don't mind the offseason they've had. I think they've tried to do everything they can to make water into wine. And I also don't necessarily think they're done because guess what, guys? If they go out and get Alonso, the lineup is a lot more scary than anybody wants to admit. But tell me, Flax. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me.
I think if you are that student who's walking into the teacher and saying, hey, will you bump my 89 to a 90? Will you bump me from a B to an A? If I'm the teacher in this scenario, I'm saying, show me that extension. Show me that contract extension with Vlad. You've got yourself an A. I've got him at a B+ right now. The big ticket item that truly has been their big ticket item this offseason seems like it's been put on the back burner. Seems like it should have been taken care of at the beginning of the offseason. before Soto signed his deal and set a new price in the market, and that never got done. And now we are 15 days from his deadline that he set, where he doesn't want to go into spring training dealing with this anymore. Doesn't feel like you're any closer. So that's the only reason I've still got him at a B plus and not quite over the hump into an A. They've absolutely made wine from water, right? Like, you're not wrong in that. I do think that their lineup is going to be much better than it was last year. I don't know that signing Alonso is going to happen because, again, like I said this to you earlier, if your premise is to Alonso is that he's going to sign to be a DH, I think you're going to have a hard time getting him to sign on the dotted line. But not having the Vlad Guerrero extension yet kind of just puts a wet towel over all the excitement that they've had this offseason.
Do you think there was actually any realistic chance that he was going to sign anything prior to Soto?
No, but I also
curious.
think
I don't say that in a bad way. I'm just curious.
No, but I also think you could have put 550 over an extended period of time and like a longer period people would have expected and probably gotten a signature with the right intangibles around it. Remember, this is not someone who's opposed to living in Canada, playing in Canada. He is a Canadian citizen, which benefits him slightly from a tax perspective. Like, there's a lot there where you could work within those intangibles and get that contract signed. It just felt like it was on the back burner. It felt like they were so set and focused on Soto that the Vlad conversation got swept under the rug, and they were like, well, once we get to that part of the offseason, well, they didn't get Soto, and then they had to focus on so many other things that got drawn out as well. That's my only problem with the way they behaved in the offseason. I think what they've gotten is great. The fact that they came out after not getting Soto or Sasaki with a B+ is incredible, considering what they were able to turn around and put together. And again, I still think they're going to be a far better team this year than they were last year, but I think that's a big piece for me. So
I like it. I don't disagree. It's more so. It is the precedent that it sets that you've gone after all these superstars for the last 4 or 5 years. You've gotten none of them, and you have a in-house superstar, even in a year where Soto was the guy. That could leave a different type of taste in somebody else's mouth, unless you said, hey, even if we sign Soto to a $700 million contract, we're going to go out and try to sign you to something ridiculous too, which maybe they did.
Yeah.
So there's lots to unpack there, of course. What's new for us? Let's roll on with this before you and I get into a nice little tangent that will last for half an hour. And that is moving over to question number 4 from me, for you. From me, for you. What do the Cubs need to accomplish this year to, are we talking extensions again? Convince Kyle Tucker that Wrigleyville is his long-term home?
I love this question. And as a salesperson in my everyday job, that is the focus of how I would take this. It has nothing to do with what you build around him on the baseball field. It has nothing to do with it. It's the Chicago Cubs. You have the aura. You have the history, you have the tradition, you already have young players. Like, that's not a question mark for him. And he himself is going to make a boatload of money, whether it's free agency or an extension. We're not saying he has to sign for less in an extension than he would potentially get on the open market. But what do the Cubs need to accomplish, in my mind, is they need to build the relationship. Relationships are how you sell anything to anyone. Your goal is not to convince him to sign an extension. Your goal is to convince him that it is his idea to sign an extension. How do you do that?
Boom.
You make Kyle Tucker feel like it's a place he can't leave. Not a place he wants to be, but make it feel like home that he didn't know was going to be home, but now he feels like has always been home. It's the surrounding intangibles of Wrigleyville. It's the lifestyle you help him create outside of the baseball stadium with his family. It's how you treat his family around the ballpark. How special you make him feel within the history of a team that has an extensive positive history around the game of baseball. Those things are what make a guy turn around and say, I could never leave this ball club. No one's ever going to treat me this way. It's how you give yourself a leg up when he inevitably gets to free agency and potentially does take a hometown deal. And when I say a hometown deal, I'm not saying a Jose Ramirez deal. I'm just saying $4 to $5 million less per year over a 10-year contract, which is negligible money and could be dispersed in other ways. It's how you get a guy to take a deferred contract rather than take the money all up front. So to me, the Cubs need to do nothing as far as building a baseball team. The Cubs need to do everything as far as building a relationship with Kyle Tucker, his family, and the city of Chicago, and not in a manufactured way, but in a truly organic way that makes him feel like this is the home he never knew he needed, but now believes is the home that he always wanted. That's where I sit.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is Sales 101 with Evan Flax. Love it. No, I totally agree with you. I think the kicker on top of this is you do literally everything that you had just said. And then if the Cubs find a way to make the playoffs and the dugout vibes match the vibes around the club for him, there is a much higher likelihood that Kyle Tucker says, why in the world would I go anywhere else for a very minor amount or a minute amount of more money? Now, there is always the possibility that somebody blows him so far out of the water that that's not what happens. However, this is the Chicago Cubs we're talking about, and let's remind everybody about it. You just heard Evan talk about tradition, history, and the track record of which the Cubs have. People will come play there. Tucker knows that. That is something that is really helping them. I'm going to back that into just adding because we're here. This is the exact same thing that the Red Sox should be looking into and doing with Garrett Crochet. And Crochet is already putting the Red Sox in a great spot where he's vocally saying that it is somewhere that he might want to spend the rest of his career. So let's see what happens here. I agree with you that it is much more about off the field than it is on the field. Cubs make the playoffs as well, and the dugout vibes are immaculate with guys like Swanson, who has been there now for a while and is a leader in the clubhouse. There is a possibility that you see him stay on a contract of which our favorite team to talk about in free agency, the Toronto Blue Jays, have offered him the most money, but the Cubs still find a way to win. So, see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a part where they have to get lucky, right? Like Kyle Tucker has to play well. And
that's true.
I'm not saying I don't think he will, but like, listen, if Kyle Tucker plays poorly, Kyle Tucker's not going to turn around and want to say like, yeah, give me a second try. Right? Like,
not wrong.
It just is what it is. Freddie Freeman was, Atlanta hometown boy, but if you ask Freddie Freeman where home is, there's a high likelihood he says LA. Like, think about the feeling he has when it comes to LA, his family, everything he went through last year, the way the organization handled it, the way that the organization has handled LA as a whole, the heroics and the situation he's gotten to be a part of now as a part of that team, the vibes that team has, the family aspect of, like, all those things changes a mindset, changes the way a guy thinks about a ball club in his life and where he was meant to be in it. So
that is the best sales organization in all of baseball, and if anybody thinks otherwise, been living under a rock. So
yeah, seriously.
Let's go ahead and we're gonna blow past some of this stuff here as we're rocking and rolling. Let's move over to buying and inviting here today. Right back to where we finished the last couple episodes, and this might be our last one because spring training is on its way. Maybe we do one more. We'll see what happens. But Evan, kick us off this week. Who is still buying in your eyes?
People are going to think I'm crazy for this. I think the Boston Red Sox are still buying. Now, listen, there's been no team in history that's had an offseason like them where they have checked in on pretty much every free agent in existence and then not done something. But when it's all said and done, they traded for Garrett Crochet, they signed Aroldis Chapman, they signed Walker Buehler, they signed Patrick Sandoval. They're giving Andrew Bailey so much more to work with on the pitching staff side of things. And offensively, right, like they needed Tristan Casas to get healthy. They need Trevor Story to be healthy. You have a solid infield, outfield mix. Rafael is an incredible utility player. He's really young. My big thing here is you need to shore up the hole at third base. I don't know.
Who are they going to do that with, Flax?
I don't know if there's a better guy to do it with other than Alex Bregman. If you want a shorter deal, trade for Nolan Arenado. You still have plenty of trade capital left. You're still the best prospect pipeline in baseball by many people's eyes, or at least one of the best. Again, not a lot of pieces missing. But again, I mean, listen, every single day that they don't go find another third baseman is every day that I think Christian Campbell's going to be on the opening day roster. And that's fine, but you also have to know where you're at in your window then, if that's going to be who you kind of put it on the shoulders of, to some extent. I would love to see Devers and Casas kind of mix and match first base DH, bring Bregman in, hold down third base, shore up the left side of your infield with a lot of ground ball pitchers, which is righties who throw soft stuff and Garrett Crochet. And in my mind, that's why I still have them as buyers. It's not they don't need to go shopping on a shopping spree, but I think they're just a few pieces short.
Yeah,
so that's who I've got buying.
Bregman would fit the ballpark pretty well, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
the home runs will be there. Bregman would really, really enjoy just smacking balls off the facing of the Green Monster on a regular basis. People would probably just stop throwing changeups to him altogether if he went to Boston, to be being honest, just because of the way he hits the off-speed pitch. But I like where you're at with Boston. There's no reason why they can't go out, spend a little bit more money, go get Bregman. This is where I remind everybody, Christian Campbell, Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, even if they're on the roster this year, you get 6 years of them. Oh wait, Bregman wants a 6-year deal? Love Bregman, but guess who's not on the roster by the time you have to make a decision on 1 to 3 of those guys? So I like where you're at with the buying on them. I am going to move us over to a quick short buying, and that's because I'm sitting around just to tell everybody one thing and one thing only, and that's really simple. The Seattle Mariners need some more pop in that lineup, and there's this dude, Pete Alonso, who's just kind of hanging out. Seattle does not have a legitimate first baseman right now, or does not have to. You've got Rayleigh or a highly talented prospect in Locklear who could play first base. However, that Mariners rotation is too good for us to waste. I'm just going to say it again and stare right into the camera to tell you guys this because I'm getting tired of it. That Mariners rotation is too good to waste. And I say this in the nicest way possible because, look, I love the franchise of which the Seattle Mariners are. It's just a team that has underperformed. And honestly, Alonso has the ability to really, really help them. I get how hard it is to hit in that stadium, but Edgar Martinez is now your hitting coach. The main power hitting righty who could hit at T-Mobile Ballpark. Wasn't T-Mobile then. I think it was Safeco. But the point being is simple. Alonso fits. You're probably going to get Alonso, who's wants a 1 to 2 year opt-out anyways, regardless of the contract you sign him on, because of how far we are in this struggle with his contract.
And because Scott Boras is his agent.
That doesn't hurt the situation or my argument. I like where you're going. But the point being, guys, is Alonso makes a lot of sense for the Mariners. It's a low floor, high upside play, but low floor for Alonso is like 30 home runs. The Mariners could have used 30 more home runs last year. So there you go. I've got the Mariners buying because I need to go see Diapito go grab Pete Alonso. Sorry, Diapetro. My bad.
There you go. Nailed it.
Every once in a while.
I love that. You know what? Listen, you're not wrong. Mariners need one more bat, but they're gonna be a fighting team this year. There's no question about it. It's a tough division.
Always is. Hard to hit there, but that's also what makes their rotation that much better. So, Flax, who's sending out invites to spring training?
My new favorite GM in baseball, Peter Bendix of the Miami Marlins, is sending out invites. We need to talk about the curious case of the Marlins' history. They've been around 32 seasons. This team in 32 seasons has made the playoffs 4 times. And if that's not crazy enough, they've won the World Series 2 of those 4 times. Super efficient winning the World Series, super inefficient giving themselves a chance at winning the World Series. And not only that, They have done the same thing after every single World Series. Immediate fire sale, get rid of all their high player contracts. We did the thing. Now we're going to start over. They made the playoffs, changed a lot at the top. Peter Bendix comes in as the GM 2 years later, and now he's going to tear everything down and rebuild. What people don't necessarily realize about the Marlins is that I think they have a very underrated farm system and young prospect core. Connor Norby, Kyle Stowers, Matt Mervis, Yuri Perez, a couple other electric arms. Couple that with Jonah Bride, Jesus Sanchez, Griffin Conine. They have a very good chance to be a very lively club this year. What do I mean when I say that? A club that is going to shock people and win games purely out of energy, purely out of being in the middle of the season and having excitement to come to the ballpark because they are Major League Baseball players. And they're going to wear a few people down and win some games they shouldn't win. Do I think that they're going to be like I think the Athletics are going to be this year? Absolutely not. Are they playing in a division that is tough as nails? Yes. They're going to probably get smashed in division. But we got a balanced schedule. They're going to have an opportunity to play every single team in baseball. And I think that they're really excited to get going this year, to turn a new leaf and see if they can start working back in the correct direction. And so I think they're inviting only because Peter Bendix still won't spend money.
and it might not be time yet, to his credit.
They're not buying.
Right.
That's what he's sticking to his laurels. He knows what he wants to do.
Let's throw one more name in there to get excited about with Miami, and I just want to make sure his name does not get missed, and that's Xavier Edwards. Little known elite shortstop prospect for the Fish. Get to know him because he was a dog last year. Really fast, plays great defense at shortstop, and swung the bat extremely well. You're talking about a guy who could steal 40 to 50 bases and play elite level defense for the Miami Marlins in 2025.
And I don't know, is Sandy Alcantara going to be back for opening day?
That's an excellent question.
Because that
doesn't hurt.
It's a true number one.
Well, here, look.
As electric as his stuff is.
For sake of time, why don't you let us know if Sandy Alcantara will be back? And I'm going to flip over to the inviting over here. And I'm going to go with another team that's very young and hasn't done much, but we want to talk about where they're at, and that's the Pittsburgh Pirates. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to get to watch the 2025 Pittsburgh Pirates. Let's talk about why. Their rotation is going to be filthy in 2025. And if I was a major league hitter, facing their rotation at the end of March and in April would make me want to poop my pants. It's just what it is. I would be scared I'm going to have a broken hand because facing Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, soon to be known to everybody in my opinion, Bubba Chandler, Mitch Keller throwing 94-mile-an-hour sinkers. And, oh, by the way, Wentz, Oviedo, and another prospect that people will be knowing soon, going by the last name of Cunningham. Guys, the Pirates' rotation is just gross. Let's also throw this out there. 5 more years of Skeens. 5 more years of Jones. 6 years of Chandler. 3 years of Keller. This rotation's also not going anywhere. Now, why am I telling you all of this? It's really simple. The Pirates have not done an insane amount this offseason, especially not in the free agent market. But what they are putting together from a core perspective is outstanding compared to what we've maybe seen in the past at times with the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're going to run a lineup out there that has O'Neill Cruz in center, Andrew McCutchen in right, Joey Bart, who finally came alive last year behind the dish, Brian Reynolds in left field, who's now in the second year of his large contract and I expect to bounce back from. Spencer Horwitz playing first base. Go take a look at that guy's number. He's an over 800 OPS career player, just truly hasn't gotten his opportunity yet. And I don't know, right field's kind of short when you got a left-handed power bat, so we love that for him too. Key Brian Hayes, Henry Davis, stalwart at shortstop and everybody's favorite utility man in the league, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, making sure shortstop's something to do here. And then, we signed Adam Frazier last week as the Pittsburgh Pirates. Guys, this is a much better team than people realize. I've been talking about how much I love the Cincinnati Reds on this podcast at times. The Pirates have a young core that is excellent. And this is exactly why they're inviting. Because I also said a bunch of names who are somewhere in the middle of their arbitration right now. And Pittsburgh's going to have to use this year to really decide what the next 5 to 6 years look like out of that core. Because there's a lot of guys that we didn't talk about who are high talent, high ceiling type guys. Nick Yorkie's not a bad bat. Leo Pagero, somebody people in Pittsburgh have been waiting to see. Nick Gonzalez hasn't been that bad in his first cup of tea at the major league level and can help behind the plate. Talked about Horwitz. Henry Davis, former number 1 overall pick that has a great profile at the plate, just hasn't figured it out yet. Ji-Hwan Bae, one of my favorite scrappy type players in the league right now who can play up the middle of the field across the board. A lot of decisions need to be made in Pittsburgh this year. When you have a lot of decisions to make as a GM with very good young players on low dollar contracts, bringing in a whole bunch of free agents a year or two before your window is truly open doesn't make sense because you have to evaluate in-house first. And I think that's where the Pirates are this year. They're evaluating their in-house talent. And if the Pirates were going to spend, you're going to see it in the next 2 off seasons because I guarantee you that front office will not waste Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Bubba Chandler. They're not going to. So if you're a Pirates fan right now, you should be excited. And you guys are inviting guys to spring training. Don't expect any crazy moves. That's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, look.
I think the Pirates are a good choice.
They've got a good roster. I think people will sleep on them, and I think they're going to really hurt somebody's chances down the stretch because there will be somebody who's in it, and it might be somebody like the Cincinnati Reds interdivision who they will play enough games with down the stretch, and they're going to really, really cause some havoc on the back end of the season because I can guarantee you, as long as they're healthy, nobody is going to want to see that 1-2-3 in a playoff stretch. Just not.
Nope.
Well, look, that was fun. We got to answer some questions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what questions got asked. We didn't necessarily get through all 5 of our questions, but we also figured you probably didn't want to hear us for an hour and a half in your headphones, and that's okay. We understand. But Flax, let's finish it off here. Any final thoughts today? Anything you wanted to talk about we didn't get to talk about?
No, nothing major today. I really enjoyed the conversation. We have more questions queued up for the next time we get to have this type of conversation.
100%. I'll leave everybody with this. We are so friggin' close. We are so friggin' close, everybody. I always make the joke that, if there was a time of the year where depression was the worst, it's obviously going to be while baseball is not happening. So this offseason has been really fun. Thank you so much for supporting Flax and I throughout the start of this journey. And baseball is almost back, people. See us every Tuesday. Find us on all of our socials, whether it's X or Instagram. Interact with us. Come hang out. We appreciate all of you. But past that, have an excellent week. We'll be back next week when pitchers and catchers are truly finding their way to Arizona and Florida.